Hi everyone, and welcome to the very first session in our new webinar series, the 2026 Digital Playbook. I'm Daniel Bianchini, and I'm joined today by Sam Searle, Matthew Taylor, and Shane O'Hara. Today's panel brings together a few members of the team, each bringing a different perspective to help marketing leaders like you stay ahead and plan for 2026 with more clarity and confidence. 2026 is shaping up to be one of the most disruptive years we've seen in digital marketing, from AI and GEO reshaping how people discover and engage to rising media costs and shifting buyer expectations. The landscape is changing fast. The reason we put this series together is simple. Planning digital marketing has never been more complex. Budgets are tighter, channels are evolving, and the rulebook keeps getting rewritten. Our goal is to cut through the noise and focus on what really matters, giving you clarity, practical insight, and real-world perspective on where to prioritize if you want to drive growth in 2026. Across this series, we'll be unpacking the areas that are causing the most friction and opportunity for B2B brands like yours. In the next session, we'll dig into what effective SEO looks like as traditional search is evolving and what GEO really means for visibility. Then we'll explore paid media with a focus on getting sharper returns as costs continue to climb. After that, we'll get into content strategy and how AI is reshaping the way content is created, distributed, and measured. We've also got sessions dedicated to GEO itself, the rise of local visibility, and increasingly complex customer journey driven by AI assistance and non-linear decision making. Later on, we'll turn our attention to metrics that matter and the budget playbook, two sessions built to help you define and maximize your spend. And finally, we'll bring it all together in the 2026 playbook, outlining the big strategic bets that we believe will shape the year ahead. But first, we're starting with a broader lens, the 2026 digital marketing landscape, what's in and what's out. In today's session, we'll explore the biggest shifts shaping the year ahead, which channels are on the rise and which are starting to lose traction, and what all this means for how you prioritize your strategies and budget. Think of this as your foundation, the context that helps frame everything else we'll be exploring across the rest of the sessions. So with that, let's jump straight into today's discussion. Shane, I'm going to come to you first, and I want to discuss what would you say is one of the biggest macro shifts that's reshaping the way that brands need to think about digital strategy going into 2026.
Thanks, Dan. Yeah, I think there's quite a few. I think we were talking the other day, Dan, about how we're kind of living through the kind of biggest changes in digital marketing, certainly for as long as we've worked in it, which is 15 to 20 years or so. So it's really important to be aware of these. I think it's even more important to be aware of them as you're kind of in the planning phase for next year, because it's one thing to plan, it's another thing to plan when there's kind of so much change going on. I guess the biggest one, most obvious one, is AI. It's obviously been around for a few years now, but I think certainly this year and definitely into next year, it's kind of becoming the mainstream in terms of how people search for what they want online. So whereas they previously would have predominantly used Google, I think more and more people are starting to use tools like ChatGPT and similar platforms. So kind of being aware of that change in the kind of discovery phase is, I think, a really important thing for brands and marketers to be aware of. It's also having a direct impact on specific channels. I guess the biggest one, certainly the one that's been most affected this year, is SEO. So with more people using tools like ChatGPT, that means slightly fewer using tools like Google. But even people who are still using Google, the way they interact with it, Google's AI overviews has a sort of direct impact on SEO performance. And I think that's definitely going to continue to accelerate into 2026. And brands and marketers really need to be in a position to understand how to leverage that, but also be realistic about where the traffic losses will be, because there definitely will be some traffic losses for SEO. And then even on the PPC side, it's not so much about a traffic issue, but AI. It's always been a part of PPC in terms of the platforms, Google Ads, Microsoft Ads, but I think it's becoming even more part of the sort of platforms themselves. So I think the key thing is going to be striking the balance between leveraging AI for efficiencies, but also having that kind of strategic oversight from the human. And it's just trying to find that right balance. And I think that might be something that brands and marketers have struggled with this year and just need a bit of guidance on going into 2026.
Mm-hmm.
And then it's also kind of impacting the customer journey overall. So what we're seeing is a lot of people starting the kind of research phase using tools like ChatGPT and then coming to the website when they're ready to convert. That obviously leaves a big gap in terms of kind of measurement of performance and everything else. So it's just trying to kind of get a grip of how your prospective customers or clients or website visitors, how it's impacting their journey and trying to report on that in the best way possible. And I guess the final way is it's kind of transforming for a lot of people how we actually do marketing work. So again, it's a kind of balance between risk and reward. So AI can give you a lot of efficiencies in terms of your marketing activity. It can help you with copywriting. It can help with ad creation, etc., etc. But you've still got to have that human oversight. Otherwise, you risk kind of losing authenticity and quality and everything else. So it's to be honest, it's the biggest change. It's a topic I could talk about for the full 30 minutes. I think it'll be a key theme across all of the webinars that we run through as part of this series. But undoubtedly, that's the kind of biggest change that we're seeing this year and we'll see next year.
Mm-hmm. There's a lot to unpack there. Obviously, you've gone into lots of the different areas and how like all of the different channels. And I guess, I mean, just coming to you, Sam, as like the head of digital here and leading the digital side, is what are you seeing from like the paid element, and what are some of the clients seeing in terms of like the changes that are shaping the digital marketing sphere for them?
Yeah, so Google AI has been around, or what people are calling Google AI optimization, has been around for a while. Things like automated bidding strategies. We've been using that for a few years now. So it's building on top of that. That's what we're really seeing. Google is taking more control with the targeting, especially as people are less wanting to give their data up with all the cookie policies and stuff. So what we've seen is that you've got to work with Google, but you've got to be able to steer it in the right direction and give it as much quality data and quality information as you can, because that's how you're going to get the best out of it. We are seeing rising cost per clicks across multiple different channels. So I think LinkedIn's been the highest I've seen it. So they started a campaign off and it was £60 for a cost per click in week 1, which is absolutely ludicrous. So I think what we're seeing is that obviously if cost per click's going up, we need to make sure that the conversion rates are going up as well, so that at the end of the day, the cost per lead, cost per conversion is staying within reason, a sensible amount, because otherwise if we don't improve those conversion rates, we're just going to keep seeing cost per lead go up and up and up. So it's really trying to find the balance of working with Google, as Shane mentioned, to try and get the efficiencies up, but also you've got to be able to steer it in the right way, looking beyond the data that you can see in the Google Ads platform, for example, to try and push it to get that quality traffic, that quality information that's going to sort of drive those results that clients care about, which is revenue at the end of the day.
Yeah, I think as you pointed out, obviously with those climbing cost per clicks and stuff like that, it's just me squeezing those margins, and everyone's getting a bit tighter on the budgets and things like that. So it is proving a little bit difficult. I guess coming across to you, Matt, talking about speaking to our clients on a regular basis and trying to understand how they're seeing it, maybe from a like a marketing level, C-suite level. I mean, where do you see like that the shift coming, maybe at the C level and things?
I think most of the people who are kind of having discussions at the C level are kind of coming in with the kind of the fear of the unknown to a certain extent. So there's a lot of obviously talk about AI and the impact that's going to have, and quite commonly kind of the behavior is someone at the C-suite level might send a kind of here's an article I've read, kind of what does this mean to us kind of thing, because I don't think that there's currently a coherent, this is what you need to do and this is how this is going to impact certainly search from a purely SEO point of view. And then it's how that's kind of knocking on. People are looking for the strategy. I think one of the biggest changes that people are going to see is, whilst previously if one channel lost things like traffic, it would pop up in another area. But that's definitely not what we're going to see with AI, because you're going to lose kind of informational traffic at the top of the funnel, and that's not going to be replicated by traffic from ChatGPT or Perplexity, because that's not how people are using those channels. So kind of that's kind of the biggest area in the probably a lot of the conversations that we're having. People are aware that this is coming. They don't really understand probably the impact that it's going to have or what they need to do to leverage it, because obviously a lot of the companies that we work with, they want to be at the forefront of marketing and making sure that they're leveraging all of these channels, but it's kind of still a bit of an unknown when it comes to AI and the impact it's going to have, because as Shane and Sam have already discussed, obviously the short-term impact is probably most heavily felt within SEO, because that's where we're seeing a lot of the traffic's going. Google have obviously eating more into people's traffic and that kind of stuff, but we haven't really seen how that's going to properly impact things like search, how that's going to impact other channels, so away from kind of SEO and PPC, how that's going to impact things like email and that kind of stuff, because the ability to kind of leverage AI, as Shane mentioned, it's a tool as well as kind of a channel. Essentially, you can use that AI to leverage and get a lot better results from other channels, whereas it's going to eat into kind of things like SEO. At some point, it's going to impact paid, because if you think about certainly at a kind of top level, the metrics that people are used to are how many clicks am I getting, how many conversions am I getting, and those kind of metrics. One of the easiest ways to guarantee you're still going to get clicks and traffic to your website is by paying for it. So I think what Sam's saying, there's an increase in competition, is probably likely a reflection of people going, my organic search traffic's gone. The easiest way for me to replicate that and guarantee I'm still getting people to my website is to essentially pay for that traffic, switch my budget away from SEO maybe into paid advertising, because that's still a metric that people are familiar with and kind of comfortable with. So realistically, a lot of kind of scorecards at the C-suite level will still look at things like traffic, conversions, and those sorts of metrics, whereas that realistically is probably going to have to shift a little bit.
So it sounds like what we're saying here is that essentially people are shifting budgets away from organic search purely because they know that at the moment they're seeing traffic decline, and maybe they're not as confident in that as a channel, but they are comfortable by moving that budget into paid activity, which is then providing more competition, which is driving up the cost there, which is essentially then they're not getting as much for their money as they once were. Do you think that obviously paid is just that channel where if we keep putting it into that, we then become solely reliant on that channel?
There's definitely a risk of that. It's as I said, it's one of those things where a lot of people will understand I pay X, I get Y kind of thing. But whereas you might have paid X and got Y, you're going to be in a situation where you might pay 2X to get Y or 3X to get Y, because people are shifting budget away from other areas. And this is very market dependent as well, or industry specific, because again, what we've seen, the impact of AI is different depending on different websites. So for example, an e-commerce website is a lot less impacted by Google's kind of AI overviews and things, because people still need to go to a website to buy something. And if their search for a low value product or a medium value product, they're probably still going to go straight to the website to buy it. They Google it, website, buy it. Whereas at the other end of the scale, kind of informational sites, they're going to go like, I can get my answer from Google. I don't need to go to another website. I can get probably an easier to understand answer from ChatGPT or Perplexity or something like that. So I don't need to go to a website. And again, even within those areas, there is still differentiation. So where there's industries like law, they're probably less impacted, because you've got to be very careful trusting an AI overview of legal arguments, as opposed to kind of, I don't know, how do I do an Excel thing? You're going to trust AI on that. Will you trust it on the law things? There's still a lot of nuance, I guess, to the message, but certainly a lot of people, I think my personal opinion is a lot of people will shift into more paid models, which isn't necessarily the right way to go, but we'll probably come to that later. But Sam, what do you think? Kind of, I guess, am I talking rubbish, or is it what you're expecting to see as well?
Yeah, I think people, instead of Googling and doing the research phase where you get a lot of results on the first page and then people go through sort of 3, 5, 10 different results, I think that bit is going to be stepped away from. It's going to be going to like places like ChatGPT. What's the best for this? Or I'm looking for this. Where should I go? It will come up with a couple of different options, and then people will go on those websites to sort of see and find out that little bit more information. So it's really then making sure every impression that the ad does show up for, even like organically, makes like you make the most of it. So it is, all the pages are really like conversion focused, clear direction, because that's the information they're then looking for, is like give them that next bit, enough information for them to be like, right, I now want to get in contact with you, or I now want to like fill in this form to get a free demo, or whatever it may be. But I think the research stage is coming away from Google, but they're still going to need it. It's just going to be higher competition, higher costs. You want to make sure that you are then being shown within places like ChatGPT and all of that, so that you are in that research or like shortlist stage before people then find out more. But it is changing, and yeah, it's every impression, every click you've got to make count now.
I think that's, again, sorry Dan, just really quickly, just to where again the strategic level or the conversations at kind of exec level need to be is like everybody to a certain extent has been, when SEO started, everyone was addicted to rankings. It was all about rankings. Then it's kind of people replace that almost with traffic. So as long as my traffic is going up, I'm kind of happy. But realistically, now I think the latest shift would definitely be more around a shift into conversion rates. So previously you could drive increased conversions from exponential growth in traffic, whereas realistically a lot of businesses are now finding out that actually there is now a finite market to that, and that's going to shrink slightly. So actually where more of the budget might need to go into conversion rate, which has historically been a bit maybe sidelined because it's a dev cost, or it's you have to kind of test a lot of stuff, whereas previously you might be able to just create the additional traffic to drive growth. I don't think that's necessarily the case anymore.
I guess, I mean, on those like conversion rates, as you say, and then obviously conversions and revenue, or whatever that conversion is for that. Like for historically, B2B businesses have been quite difficult to then track that through to a revenue. You get them into their CRM and you start to move that through. But as a business, it's always been our focus to do that in terms of pipeline driving and trying to make sure that we're impacting bottom line. Do you believe, and Shane, I'll come to you on this, do you believe that this is a shift that we will see more and more across the industry, or do you feel that there will be other metrics that they may come around?
I think there'll definitely be additional metrics. I agree that it's always been a bit of a challenge for a lot of businesses. We see it with some of our clients, trying to attribute activity to revenue. There's always a lot of sort of grey spots there. I think it's going to get much harder with the introduction of AI tools like ChatGPT, because there's so much going on, certainly in the research phase, outside of the kind of tracking ecosystem, if you will. And from what we're seeing, a lot of the research is being done over here, and then it comes into the website to later convert. So it's going to get a lot more challenging, but it can't be ignored. It needs to be addressed head on.
I mean, definitely the tracking has been, and we've obviously worked with clients of all sizes. So, but even really big brands that we worked with can sometimes have really poor kind of CRM or attribution or tracking through to sale or that kind of stuff. And similarly, previously, a lot of brands, even things like newsletter sign up, they'll be like, I'm not really bothered by that. But now you really do need to own the audience that you get, and rather than relying, because one of the things we haven't mentioned, obviously, is stuff like cookie and tracking and those sorts of things. If you're losing, let's say, I would normally estimate for most clients, it's probably 50, maybe 40 to 60% of their traffic they don't track through their website because people decline cookies. The cookies don't work for whatever reason. So realistically, it's never been more important to have a really robust CRM system, even things like newsletter sign up. So you've got a reason for people to come back. And especially if you're going to lose traffic to AI, getting people to come back into your ecosystem, or them being in your ecosystem, has probably never been more important. I think it's previously, as I've indicated, there's probably been an element of laziness within marketing where it's like, oh, you know, we can always top up the top of the funnel, but we've got this leaky funnel as we go down. Never really mattered before, not to this extent. So I think people, certainly the CRM is one of the kind of key things that I think a lot of people are going to start focusing on, and really start getting an understanding of their data.
Mm-hmm.
It's also important for like to gather that first party data to be able to feed back into the ad platforms, and like as we're having to give Google more control, having things like to be able to say, look, here's our customers, here's who we want more of these people. It's just going to help those algorithms. It's just going to help those algorithms grow more and more.
That's the thing. It's the realistically, and it's not just this year, because Sam's right. The what used to be called an algorithm or kind of algorithmic optimization is now AI. But that's only as good as the data that you're able to feed into it. So the better the marketing lists that you have, the more you understand your clients, your ICP, the better you're able to train the algorithms and the AI in order to target your kind of your audience within paid.
And I guess, I mean, what we've talked about a lot just now is just like the customer journey, essentially, right? It's been changing, it's quite messy. And we talked a lot about getting them onto email, and maybe nurturing that a bit more. And that's something that lots of people talked. We talked about paid, and organic, and how that's struggling to maybe drive as many top of the funnel sort of visits and stuff. So, I mean, how are we looking at the changing behaviors of users and things around the use of LLMs, or whether they're just using the AI overviews, or from a paid perspective, are they just looking more at a conversion sort of element? Is it like bottom of the funnel rather than top of the funnel? I mean, how are we seeing that?
Yeah, I think it's with paid, you want to be able to make sure you're covering that bottom of the funnel really, really, really well. So you are making every click impression work the best. Previously, things like display, where you'd have cost per clicks was so cheap, you'd just sort of set something up, and this is like years and years ago, and sort of give it a vague sort of targeting and be like, yeah, let's hope for the best, but it's such cheap traffic. Again, people like to see the clicks coming through. It doesn't necessarily matter so much about the conversion rate with driving traffic. Things like that's been moving away, and it is more like utilizing Google's like Performance Max. When it first started, it was pretty rubbish. It has come a long way. Still not like, doesn't work for everyone, and there's still a lot of room it needs to improve, but it's more thinking about the audiences and what their behaviors are, how they're interacting, what they're researching, trusting Google in a way with why they're showing an ad to that person, and less thinking about where that ad is being placed. On certain websites, you might look and be like, why is that there? And it's like, no, it's more about the person than where the ad is. So I think there's a little bit of change happening there. It's, yeah, as things move on, and that's why having that first party data and making sure everything's linked in so you can utilize that with the audience signals are really important, rather than just thinking old school, where's the placement.
Mm-hmm. So there's a lot of talk there about being very much in who the person is that we're targeting, that ICP, being really specific around like who are they, what do they do, what are their interests, demographically, firmographics, all of those type of things to really enhance the performance of not just paid activity but any other activity as well.
Yeah, definitely. And that's like, I know I mentioned Google with it, but it's how Facebook, it's trusting. It's that weird one. You've got to trust them to be able to get the most out of it, but you don't want to trust them too much, because at the end of the day, they want to spend as much ad spend as possible. So it is all about that balance, and it's still a lot of testing. I'm always saying, you can't just sort of set and forget and hope that a campaign will work well. You need to test, and also how you set up something now doesn't necessarily is going to be the best in even 3 months time now, because things are changing so quickly. Like, yeah, it's one that you've got to keep on it, keep making sure things are up to best practice, and yeah, just sort of keep going, keep testing, because that's how you're going to stay ahead.
And I guess, I mean, sorry.
I was going to say, just also at strategic level, I think what people include under paid advertising is going to become broader, because as Sam alluded to, obviously there is Performance Max, which does get you in front of where your audience should be, not necessarily choosing exact placements, but there's also things like advertising on websites like Capterra, which previously is very distinct, probably away from most PPC people would probably say it's not like a Google Ads or whatever, but it is where your audience are going to come, and leveraging kind of those advertising opportunities is going to strategically become more important, as it's a really good way to kind of get people at the kind of mid, or certainly kind of towards the top of the bottom of the funnel, if that makes sense. And it's that sort of thing you're going to, rather than relying on Google for that, for example, you might then rely on someone like Capterra, or somewhere where you know your audience and your ICP is going to be doing the kind of evaluation stage. So you would move your budget away from Google and into another channel.
Mm-hmm. And how will this change, like, as people start to use the LLMs as like their own personal assistants? It's the first thing that they go to. I know that we've had many conversations between us where we go, Dan, why didn't you just go on the Chat GPT and ask that question, or things like that? And I know earlier in the year when I was abroad, I was in Venice, and I was just watching some people. They were just on the Chat GPT, just asking questions and stuff like that, where they were going when they was traveling. And similarly, Shane, we had a conversation recently where your little one was going and said to you, why don't you just use AI mode as the way of getting that information? Is a lot quicker, it's a lot easier. So how are things going to transition into things like, how are we going to understand prompts and things like that going forward, when there's limited tools at this stage, especially as I imagine, or I'm expecting, Google to push AI mode as the first thing that you will see going into 26?
I think a lot of brands are looking at this, and some of them are feeling a bit nervous. Some of them feel like they kind of need to nail it and get it right first time, but it's not going to be the case. It's evolving so quickly. I think usage of these is growing so quickly as well. There isn't a kind of silver bullet at this point. What I would recommend is a kind of step one: understand how your audience is using tools like ChatGPT, etc. Where does your brand feature for the kinds of things that people would search for, which will be quite similar to what they search for with in terms of SEO at Google, but maybe a bit more conversational. Try and get an idea in terms of who's winning that at the moment. So which of your competitors are showing up, and why, and then what do you need to do to get there yourself. It's a little bit similar to SEO and GEO, so optimizing for tools like ChatGPT, actually leans on SEO quite heavily as well. So there's quite a correlation between how well you perform on SEO and how well you perform on GEO. And I think that's one of the reasons, just to go back to a previous point, that I think it's a big mistake for most brands to cut SEO spend because they see that top of the funnel traffic dropping. The people are still there, they're still searching, they're just using different tools. And if you want to be shown in ChatGPT, etc., then you do need to have good SEO performance. And there's a million other reasons to continue with SEO as well. So I do think that's a mistake. I do think just cutting that budget and putting it into paid or anywhere else would be detrimental.
Sorry, Matt, just to jump onto that, to add to that is also AI overviews. Like, they pull content from the SERPs, and that doesn't mean you're ranking in positions 1 to 10. They can be from anywhere. If you're not creating that content anymore, you're creating those assets that are going to be focusing on the entire funnel, whether it's a multi-funnel, it's a linear funnel, whatever that may be, it's not going to be pulled in. Therefore, you're missing that brand awareness piece. So we almost need to look at search. Not only is it just purely about commercial driving traffic, but it's that brand awareness piece as well. It's that holistic. And I know that as a company, as a wider industry, we talk about search being holistic and using it in different marketing channels. I think this is really going to push it in that direction. Sorry, Matt. I interrupted.
That's all right. I was just going to reinforce something that Shane said. Obviously, the top of the funnel is still there. It's just on a different channel. And the reality of GEO, or ranking within the LLMs, however you want to kind of say that, it still needs that top of the funnel content on your website to understand your authority within an area, to kind of get that, kind of link you to the right entities. It also likes frequency. So even if you have all of this information, if you suddenly stop publishing it, in a similar way to Google, after a certain extent, you will start to see the volume of traffic going down, or your visibility within the LLMs will start to decline if you're not constantly creating kind of fresh content. There's different content strategies you'd probably engage, but you still need to be doing it, and but also making use of that content across your whole ecosystem. So email, webinars, kind of your newsletters, all of those sorts of things. It's no longer you're no longer doing SEO content, which is a phrase I hate, but you're doing content to use across your marketing channels and across your ecosystem. But it's still, if you want to appear in ChatGPT, you do need to continue to create that content. And we've looked at it for clients, and essentially the behavior is very similar. So if you create informational content, it does generate a higher volume of traffic from the LLMs. The commercial content usually generates a lower volume of content, but a much higher conversion rate. So the funnel hasn't changed ultimately, but where people are experiencing the funnel has changed.
Yeah, it's really interesting how this is going to continue, and obviously there's lots of education and stuff around that. I think one more question before I move on to the next section is for Sam. Is obviously we talked a lot around LLMs and AI mode at the moment, and it's predominantly organic traffic or content and stuff like that. At some point, we know it's coming. When is they going to monetize this? And I guess this is some with AI mode, but I'm also interested in how our Perplexity, ChatGPT potentially going to bring in some sort of paid model into that as well. Is that something that we may see, not necessarily in 2026, but in the future?
It's coming. It's definitely coming. Like, yeah, it's a matter of when. And I think the hardest thing is going to be trying to get that conversion tracking working, to be able to understand it and then be comfortable enough investing more into those areas, or sort of seeing how it works. It's conversion tracking, I'm always like, you need to invest in it, but it is difficult, and you might need to rely less on the actual numbers of things, but more on the trends and the journey it is going, to sort of see, is this working? But yeah, it is coming. Don't know when yet, but it's sort of, we're starting to set some Google Ads accounts up to be what Google reps are saying, a bit more AI friendly, where we sort of, is a bit more broader keywords within one ad group and campaigns. It's less granular than it was before. So yeah, if you listen to Google reps and everything, it's the journey's starting. They've not let on when there's going to be a bit more of a switch.
I think as like the places that I would look to predict the future essentially is within the Google advertising space. It's what the Google reps say, because realistically they are maneuvering people to where Google want them to be, and they always have done. A lot of people, myself included, not particularly keen on the Google reps, but realistically they're telling you what Google want you to be doing, and that's going to be there. Ultimately, as soon as Google can have an effective way to monetize their AI results, that will become the default. Basically, that's not the default at the moment, because they can't monetize it as well as they can the normal search results. As soon as they figure that out, and there's a lot of white space within those AI results at the moment, which I can see ads going into, that's where it's going to switch. If you're looking at the other models, so ChatGPT, those sorts of things, what I wouldn't look at Google as an example. I'd look at subscription-based websites as an example. So realistically, I'm looking at Amazon, Netflix, that kind of thing, they started off purely subscription based. That's where their revenue is being generated. But realistically, there's a ceiling to that. There's a ceiling to how much someone's going to pay on a subscription based model. There's a ceiling to how many people are going to subscribe. The obvious next step, which is what they're all started doing, is putting advertising on stuff. So if you essentially, it's the old adage, you follow the money, or what's going to generate shareholder value. Ultimately, you get market share, and they've all rather conveniently settled on kind of the subscription base, which works really well for all of them. And then ultimately, once that plateaus, you'll start to see advertising go onto that. The people who can't do that is Google, because after 20, 30 years of not paying for Google, no one's going to start paying for Google on a subscription-based model. If you go onto YouTube, how many people actually use YouTube Premium? It's probably relatively low, because people are used to that free element of YouTube. That'll be the same on Google. So Google have actually got the biggest issue insofar as people are used to using that for free. People are a bit more used to paying for things like ChatGPT.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's something that I can see. I completely agree on that, the advertising space, and as you said, like the Netflix model as such. So it'd be intriguing to see how that sort of plays out and how quickly that comes into play.
Yeah, I mean, ultimately, they're still in the cool phase, aren't they? To go back to, is it The Social Network, the film, where you go on about Facebook wasn't. If you put ads on Facebook, it's not cool. And funnily enough, it's probably not cool anymore because there's ads everywhere. But they're in that space at the moment where ultimately they can survive off the subscription, but also the funding that they get from other people. They don't need to monetize in the same way in the short term that Google do.
And I guess also from a training point of view, the amount of people that are using it on subscription will then train their models better, so therefore improve them. So then when they are ready for ads, they have got a much better product to be able to advertise within, therefore making more money from any investment that they may get, potentially.
Yeah.
I was gonna say, and they'll have so much data on those individuals, and to be able to get good targeting with the ads, hopefully show the right ads to the right people. If you can, again, get the tracking right, with proof that, look, this is what we've done, you've invested 10 grand and you've delivered X amount of leads, which is then driven this pipeline, people will then start shifting budgets away from some marketing channel, ad channels where it is a bit difficult to see what's going on beyond potentially a click. Like some of the worst I've seen of being able to optimize and sort of see what the ads are doing on platforms like Snapchat and Spotify, where you really are, a lot of it is still behind a screen. I think with some of these sort of other areas that could be opening up, they've got so much data, can they share that, and then can it be built on, and then you suddenly show it works, more budget goes over there, people are happy to begin with, then we'll start to see cost per clicks going up, or however it's going to be cost people. So it'll be interesting. Just jumping on it at the right time, it will be key.
Yeah. I think just one final bit before we do move on. I think it's also the other consideration that people have, certainly Google have got, is if you look at AI mode within Google, while it does have a lot of similarities to like the ChatGPT interface, I don't think it has the functionality, because it is essentially there for search, whereas ChatGPT has a wider usage. So they are going to lose market share, because ChatGPT, as well as, well, a lot of models, they do search, but they also have wider functionality, which isn't usually what people would describe as search, for example, whereas Google's AI mode is purely around search. I wouldn't go and do stuff I do in ChatGPT in Google's AI mode.
I'm intrigued. I want to move on, but I just want to leave this in the room anyway. But at the moment, a lot of the LLMs, in my opinion, are utilizing search indexes, predominantly Google's. So if Google wanted to, could they just stop them from essentially viewing their index by whatever technical means that they are? Just say, right, just stop ChatGPT from going into my listings or using my index. And how would that then impact the LLMs in the future? I just wonder in the background whether Google's playing the long game here, in terms of they're gathering all the information, they're doing all this stuff, and reality is that they can potentially impact what ChatGPT are doing or Perplexity and stuff like that in the future. I don't know. It's just something to throw out there. And
You're right. They've done it before. They did it to advertisers when they changed kind of the key, like what the stocked keyword referral data going through. They've recently done it to SEO tool providers where they've changed how the search results work, and that impacts the wider business. They still do have a lot of control. But yeah, they might become a data provider at the end of the day. Do they need the advertising and search business if they can sell the data that they've already collected and all the information and content they have?
Yeah, interesting. Okay, I'm conscious of time, so for the last 5 to 10 minutes, I wanted to touch upon a couple of areas, if that's this. So firstly, I want to touch upon like what channels or tactics are starting to lose traction, or you feel that will start to lose traction as we go into 2026. I also want to touch upon the flip of that, like what are going to grow in terms of importance in 2026. And I just want to finish at the end of, I want to understand one mistake from each of you that you feel brands will make in their 2026 plans. So I think that'd be a good way to just round out this discussion in terms of like the plans or mistakes for next year as we move into the next sessions. So in terms of like the tactics and channels that are starting to lose traction, I mean, where do we want to start with this? Like, obviously we've talked a lot about some of the organic stuff, and we're talking about paid in terms of like CPCs. I mean, Shane, where do you see things happening here?
I think one of the big ones is going to be driving top of the funnel traffic to a website, and driving performance off the back of that. It's how a lot of websites kind of drive the bulk of their performance at the moment, certainly publishing websites and things like that. But even for kind of B2B SaaS businesses, a lot of performance has previously been driven by that top of the funnel traffic. And then once you've got them to the website, trying to push them down. I think that's going to become much more difficult with people using tools like ChatGPT for that discovery phase, but also, and maybe more so, because of Google's AI overviews. So for many top of the funnel queries, they can get that answer in the search results without having to click through. And we've seen that all across 2025, and I think we'll continue to see it into 2026 as well. So I think that's a tactic that's got to change. As we've said, it doesn't mean that we should stop producing top of the funnel content, because it definitely still has a role to play. And if you do stop producing that content, you're going to see the impact elsewhere. But I think just using that as a tactic, it's not going to sort of provide as much value as it once did. I think brands are going to have to focus on kind of middle of the funnel content a lot more than they have previously. And I do think it's a bit of a neglected area, because it doesn't necessarily drive as much traffic as the top, but it also doesn't drive as many conversions as the bottom. So it is kind of the kind of problem child that can sometimes be forgotten. But in terms of driving traffic and qualified traffic as well, I think that's the one area that I would recommend prioritizing from an SEO content point of view, to use the phrase that Matt doesn't like.
So just on that, we talk about the middle. Are you talking about things such as like case studies and like information that supports all of that round? I know that for us as a business, we've got some great case studies on our website, and that's generated some leads, and more and more at the moment as people are looking for ICP related content specific to their needs, solving a problem. I mean, is that the sort of content that you're talking about here?
Yeah, exactly. I mean, I tend to see case studies as lower down in the middle, if that makes sense. But it could be things like comparison tables, for example. If you're looking for a HR software provider, you might search provider A versus provider B. And a really useful piece of content can be a kind of detailed comparison table. It's something we've discussed with our clients over the years. Everyone kind of knows it makes sense, but again, it's a bit of a tricky piece of content to create. A lot of time goes into it. There's not an awful amount of search volume for it, so it's one of those things that kind of gets put on the back burner. But yeah, I think that's one area where people need to focus.
I guess on that as well, people don't want to put their pricing on the website.
Yes.
So
There's that as well.
I literally wanted to jump in and be like, I think the people that win in 2026 are the people who are confident and will put their pricing on the site, because the ICP for a lot of companies is their expectation is they don't have to call to find out the price, and it will put them off. So my personal opinion is I think that the people who are upfront with their pricing and willing to put it on their site are going to be the ones that win in 2026.
It's interesting. Okay. Sam, what about you in terms of like tactics that potentially are losing traction? I mean, where do you see that in the world that you sit?
So I think for me, people used to be able to just rely on one channel and it keeps the business ticking. So whether that would be investing just in Google Ads to be able to drive leads, or even invest in organic to drive more traffic through, and then it goes down the funnel that way. That's not going to work now. There isn't a magic channel, magic sort of area to just focus on. You've got to take that step back, look at all the different touch points and focus and invest in lots of different areas. You've got to be careful, obviously, not to sort of waste too much spend, but there isn't just a magic campaign that just drives high quality leads. It'd be great if there was, but there isn't. So you've got to take that step back, understand your target audience, what they're doing, what they're researching, what do they want? Is it that people are quite time poor at the moment, so they don't want to have to wait 1-2 business days to get a pricing quote or to find out exactly what you guys can offer. Give that information out, look at the whole full funnel, and don't just rely on one magic channel to keep your business afloat.
I think it's a sensible approach, being holistic, not focusing on one particular area. I mean, whether that's organic, whether that's paid, whether that's email, whatever that may be, I think you need to have that holistic approach to marketing more now than ever before. I don't know if brands are going to take that approach. I think they're going to be more reluctant to do that because of the return on investment maybe in the short term, and they're just going to pin their hopes on one. That's just a thought, but again.
It definitely, I agree. I do think people like to be like, historically this worked. It's like, yeah, but that's in the past. We're not looking in, like, we're moving forward. Stop looking in the past. That used to work. I don't care. We need to keep testing. We need to keep trialing different areas. Also speaking to different teams, whereas I think in the past people would just sit with the marketing team, or even within the organic, the messaging, the campaigns, they've got to work. Your email team's got to work with your sort of paid team that's working with the content team, talking to sales to sort of see what is bringing in that quality traffic, those quality leads that are more likely to convert. It's working as one team, which sounds a bit cheesy and a bit cringy, but it really is. That's how you're going to get the best results.
Yeah, absolutely. Could give many examples, but I'm conscious of the time and obviously the people on the webinar. So, okay, so just moving in. I mean, what are the areas of channels or tactics and stuff like that we feel are going to be growing in importance as we go into 2026? I'm going to come to you first.
Excellent. I will definitely go with, it's not really a channel, more of a tactic. Conversion rate optimization is going to be it's going to have the importance that it should have always had, basically, because individual channels are really going to struggle. I think historic metrics that people focused on around visibility, traffic, those aren't going to kind of cut the mustard to the same extent. So it's definitely going to be maximizing every click that you get onto your website, and that's definitely going to be around CRO.
Excellent, thank you. Shane?
I think the big obvious one is GEO, but we've talked about that quite a lot. I think one of the biggest ones, which probably won't feature too much in most digital marketing plans for next year, is brand building. Because we know it touches SEO. If you can get other websites, other communities, actual customers to talk about what you want to talk about as well, rather than just talking about it yourself, that has a direct impact on SEO. It has a big impact on GEO. It has an impact just generally from a kind of customer's point of view. If you put yourself in the position of someone searching for a product or a service or for some information, and you have that third-party validation, it carries a lot of weight. There's a lot that can go into it. There's the kind of PR side of things. There's the SEO link building side of things. There's kind of community building, user-generated content. It's definitely a channel in its own right, but I think certainly from a digital marketing point of view, it doesn't have as much focus as I think it needs to, certainly going into next year.
Yeah, I agree with that. Sam?
I'd say definitely what Matt said, CRO, invest in good conversion tracking, but also invest in good content that can be used across multiple channels, especially video. I think that's, from listening to what Google reps are trying to line up, is definitely where they're going to be wanting to push it. So when it is creating content for the website, it's not just thinking blog form, it's not just sort of thinking text. Move away from just images as well. It's really utilizing video. The thing is, it is more expensive to create, but if you can get it right, you can then use it across multiple different platforms. People are getting a little bit more like fatigued with certain types of content, so you need to be able to invest in it frequently and change it. You can't just have one video that's going to last you the year. It does need to be authentic, it does need to be interesting, provide value. So that would be another thing that I think people need to not shy away from, because it does take more time, more thought, more effort, more money, but it's what people are, how they're wanting to digest more information nowadays.
I
Be
guess
the
also,
cheapest it's ever been. As it's time consuming, but it's probably the cheapest it's ever been to create, because you can use AI or other tools, or you can film stuff on your phone, that kind of thing. So it's probably never been as easy or as cheap to create video as it currently is.
And people want authentic videos. They don't necessarily want these blockbuster ones with certain celebrities riding in on a horse to say, look what we do. Yeah.
I'm just thinking the Dollar Shave Club there with that reference. I think, like, for me, like with the video stuff, it's almost like a unique selling point. It's a way that you can be different with content, specifically the written form. It's very easy to review and sort of like not copy, but sort of try and improve skyscraper type content, if you like. Whereas if you're creating video or creating content that is not as easy to replicate, you're starting to build that moat around your brand and around the business. So yeah, I can completely get with that.
And
think
show value. Sorry, I was just going to say, add value to what you do. Show that you're the expert. Like, provide that extra information that you might not be able to get across in text.
Yeah, I mean, from my side, I think an area that I feel that should have been concentrated on for quite some time is more middle to bottom of the funnel. I think some of the stuff that Shane said earlier in the session, where we're talking about content that is actually going to drive commercial reference, commercial value, that's either going to help you make a decision or push you to making a decision. I think that's where a lot of focus should be. Like, yes, we need to continue with the top of the funnel content to ensure that we have content that's going to satisfy every need and every requirement and be there everywhere in terms of like answer engine and all that sort of stuff. But if we focus more on that middle to bottom of the content, making sure that actually, as you're more Google becomes more commercially savvy in terms of when you're typing in, the intent of the searches are more commercial, then that's going to be picked up from your side on the website. That's just an opinion from mine. Okay, we're running massively over our 30-minute slot, but quick fire round is, what mistakes do you see brands making in 2026? We'll do one each. Sam, I'm going to start with yourself.
I'd say you've not no. Next person. I'll come back.
I'm happy to jump in. I think the big one for me is going to be underestimating the impact of AI, whether that's people using ChatGPT, whether it's the impact of Google AI overviews, whether it's how you can leverage it in your kind of marketing activity. I think there are a few brands out there which kind of see this as a bit of a fad or too early on. And I think if it's not a part of your planning for 2026, your chance of having a better 2026 than 2025 are slim to none. It can't be ignored, I don't think.
Yeah, and I don't disagree with that. Matt?
I'm going to go with underinvesting in CRM and data. Basically, I think it's never been more important to understand your audience, be able to track it, and to then own that audience and leverage every other resource you've got across that audience.
Mm-hmm. Sarah, are you good for one, or do you want me to go?
No, I'm good. So for me, would be investing in the conversion tracking, and so you can gather your first party data to be able to help influence the algorithms, and then you can obviously keep investing in what delivers results.
I think there's a bit of a theme here. Like for me, I think it's going to be investment in organic. I think what's going to happen, or what I feel I'm going to start to see, is people are going to go, actually, we're going to move budget away from SEO and put it somewhere else, when actually SEO will start to fuel a lot of this geo activity. I think if we want to grow in 2026, and I appreciate that there's obviously economic issues going on in the world, but it's going to be around, we should be investing in geo as a separate new channel, not as a replacement for a different channel. I think that's what the biggest mistake will be next year. I think it'd be predominantly around investment. Cool. Okay. Well, I mean, thanks very much, guys. I really appreciate your time talking to me today. In the next session, we're going to be talking about creating effective SEO strategies going into 2026, touching upon and expanding on some of the things that we've talked today. If you have any questions, obviously feel free to reach out. But thanks very much. Thank you.